What's up, guys? This is Kyle from Wax Museum, and I've got a fun video for you today that I've spent really a lot of time on this week. And to start off here, I'm going to show you on the screen a sneak peek of some Kobe stuff that I'll talk about more at the end of today's video. So if you like what you see here, if you like stuff like this, you'll want to make sure to stay tuned for that. Okay, so why am I making this video today? Well, about a week ago, I saw a major auction house showcase a Bill Russell warm-up that they were classifying as game worn. And one of the top comments said something to the effect of, since when did we start calling warm-ups game worn? And personally, that classification, it really doesn't bother me, seeing as number one, it's part of the game experience. And number two, card manufacturers have been classifying them as such for a very long time. And as I'm going to show you here, sometimes they labeled them clearly, other times they did not. I'm going to look at just a few here real quick. Here's some from Topps. You can see this Reggie Miller. It says authentic NBA All-Star Game Worn warm-up. This one here, this Cuttino Mobley from Topps Finest, authentic Game Worn shooting shirt. So Topps did that from time to time. Here's one from Fleer, where they actually showed you the source material on the back. They showed you that it was a warm-up, and they labeled it as a game-worn warm-up. They also had another one from that same set of Antoine Walker where they did the same thing. Now, I have another Antoine Walker card. You'll see the pictured here on the left that has a piece of a patch, but this card says game-worn jersey. Well, obviously that's not from an actual game-worn jersey because it includes part of that 50th anniversary patch, which was not on jerseys. It was only on warm-ups. So doesn't mean they were always accurate with the labeling. Same thing here. You see this Jermaine O'Neal patch. It says game-worn jersey. There was never a Pacers jersey that had a patch like that. So that's obviously from a warm-up as well. And then even Upper Deck, I know everyone kind of puts them to a higher standard sometimes. Let's look at how they handled one of their Bill Russell warm-ups that they had. On the left side here, we have this patch, and it says this is a piece of a patch from a warm-up worn by Bill Russell in an NBA game. So they're classifying that warm-up as game worn. At least they are calling it a warm-up, though. This second one here, they called it a warm-up. But then this third one here, they said it was game worn. They didn't say it was a warm-up necessarily. So you just have to pay attention to what card manufacturers, which ones will say what things. But this just goes to show that, there are a lot of things out there that are warm-ups that have been classified as game worn. Take this warm-up from the 2006 All-Star game. It's the letter B from Bryant on this jacket. Well, Upper Deck's saying that that's game worn. So same thing here with this warm-up from Carlos Boozer. It says it's certified to us as having been used in an NBA game. So I want you to be aware of that. And as I was thinking about this comment on this social media post, it dawned on me that a lot of people don't realize just how often manufacturers have relied on warm-ups for their game-worn patch relics. And now that's not to say that I can personally identify every one of them either. I wish I could, but some of them look very much like jersey pieces, and I'll touch more on that later. But I thought it would be a fun exercise to show you some of the ones from the Panini era that I know of. I know everything I've shown you so far has been, before the Panini era, but I want to show you around 200, yes, 200 examples, and some of them will be very quick, from that Panini era, and maybe seeing those will influence your collecting in some capacity moving forward. Okay, so I want to start off with kind of an easy one or a more obvious one here, because we did have a few of those even in this Panini era. Occasionally, Panini has specified when a piece is from a warm-up. Not often, but occasionally they have done that. I would say the most prominent example would be this set from 2016 Panini Limited called Preparation, where it is all warm-up pieces. And on the back, it even says this enclosed game-worn warm-up material is guaranteed by Panini America. And most of the cards picture the player wearing a warm-up. So it was a warm-up themed set. We don't see that often, but I want you to know that some of that stuff does exist. Maybe that's something you want to pursue in the future. Another example This is my friend Jason's card. This is a Kawhi Leonard star patch relic, and you can see that that white star is not anywhere on this jersey. Well, they specify on the back the enclosed material is from a warm-up jacket worn by Kawhi Leonard prior to the 2019 NBA All-Star game and is guaranteed. So they didn't necessarily call it game worn there. So, you know, they're kind of being more specific when they choose to be. Same thing with this Lowry piece here. It says it's from a warm-up jacket worn by Kyle Lowry prior to the 2019 All-Star game. Now, we usually don't get things that are that specific. Take, for example, this. I think this is from the 2011 All-Star game. It just says the enclosed material is guaranteed by Panini America. And a lot of that stuff, even though this right here is an all-star themed set, a lot of that stuff ended up in random sets just because they had so many pieces from those. They had the jackets, and in a lot of cases, they had the pants as well. If you look at this, and I think this is awesome, by the way. I would love to own something like this Darren Williams piece, and it's from the pants. And you know, they're using whatever pieces they had, and they're making their way into a lot of products. Occasionally I still see, I think I saw some Amari Stoudemire stuff from this year that was still from one of those all-star jackets, so they're still using some of that stuff up, and that was from 2011. Now, we've seen other all-star stuff kind of creep into cards here. This says an authentic game-worn jersey. Well, I'm pretty sure that that's a Toronto warm-up from the All-Star game for Paul George. There's never been a Pacers warm-up that had something like that on it, and it does match that warm-up there. But let's move into something else that Panini likes to use a lot of, especially in the Adidas era, which would be pre-2017 or before the 2017 season, and that's jackets, right? These big warm-up jackets. So here you see an example from Damian Lillard, and you can even see the jacket, a picture of the jacket here on the right. But those are some pieces from that. Same thing here. We've got his teammate, CJ McCollum. So you see same thing. Another one of those patches from that jacket. And you're going to see trends as we go through this video today. So one of the trends is that not only did they like these jackets with different teams, but there were certain teams that they must have had great access to or great working relationships with, because they used a lot of Portland warm-ups. That's one of them, and you'll see some of the other teams later. So here's an example. Even though he's pictured as a Bulls player here, he was on the Trailblazers prior to this, and it says so on the back of the card. Noah Vonleh, we've got this Blazers warm-up here. You can see that's the back of the jacket. I wanted you to see that so you know kind of what those patches look like. Here we've got Noah again. We've got Mo Harkless. We've got a couple Damian Lillard. So I believe that those are from the back of that jacket. And some of these are going to be speculation today, but I've done, you know, as much research on this as I can, and I've tried to match up everything as best as possible. If it's not an exact match, though, it's still to show you that it comes from something similar to that. Now, here's another version of that jacket. The Knicks had several versions. They had this white version. So you can see the top two pieces here from Porzingis are from that ball Knicks logo on the front. Well, then I like this picture because it's got another player in there, and it shows you the back of that warm-up as well. And I believe that's where these are more, you know, like words. That's where these patches came from. You'll notice also that Panini will lump a lot of the patches in the same types of sets. So, you know, these the rising stars or the global icons, a lot of the Porzingis stuff in there would be from these jackets. Here's a blue jacket. This is not necessarily, the one on the right is not necessarily one that Porzingis specifically wore. It's just a sample of one, so you can see that. But you see that 94 patch on that sleeve there, and then you see that 94 patch there as well. Another team that Panini liked to work quite a bit with, or use jackets from, or use all sorts of warm-ups from, was the Denver Nuggets. So here's the same style jacket. So Adidas made those jackets for pretty much, for as far as I know, all teams that season. And you can see we've got Jokic here, Will Barton, another Nuggets warm-up. This would be like considered, I would guess, instead of a jacket, maybe a shooting shirt. So you see that Nuggets logo on the front. There, a lot of teams had these as well. Here's Mike Miller seems very happy for somebody that did not get a lot of minutes there in Denver. I bet a lot of you don't even remember him as a Nugget. I think he was only there for like 60 games total. But anyway, they got warm-ups from him, so those made their way into products here recently. Here we have Gallinari and a picture of Gallinari on the right, some Gallinari cards. And I like these two pictures because the bottom picture shows you the back of that warm up as well. And you know, they used every piece that they could consider a patch or consider a prime piece. Pretty much anytime there was a color break. So I believe these are examples from the back of that shooting shirt there. Now, it's interesting to me that Panini limited set that I mentioned earlier has a couple of Nuggets players in there, which is nice. But it's funny because the warm-ups that they show the pictures, they show pictures of the players wearing are not the pieces in the cards. It's not the same style. You would have thought maybe they would have matched that up. So the one on the left would be very similar to what I just showed you. The one on the right is more like a vinyl, and it's got like kind of like porous features in it, or it's got some mesh holes in it, if you want to call it that, even though maybe it's not a mesh material. So it would be more like what you see right here. This was more of a jacket, and it's got the holes in it and kind of that vinyl type material there. So I wanted to pull a couple of Gallinari patches that I could find that had that as well, so you could see that. Here's a different style that didn't have the holes in it. So it was more of just a regular shirt, not a jacket, but it did have kind of like a vinyl type material with it. So once again, I said, you know, a lot of Denver stuff. Well, guess what? We're not done. Here's one that was, you know, everything was blue and it was still a vinyl. So it's very similar shirts, but they just changed up the styles. Adidas made a lot of different warm-ups. All right, so now let's go to another team here. And this team is the Orlando Magic. And they wore, well, a lot of teams wore these, but Panini managed to get them mainly from, I've seen them mainly from the Magic, these Black History Month shirts. So you can see here, I found 3 DJ Augustine patches from this colossal set that feature different parts of that shirt, which I think that's actually pretty cool. I might look for one of those for my collection now, just because it's something different. You don't see a lot of those out there. I don't really see Panini doing much of that today. They definitely didn't do any of the shirts or anything from the bubble, or at least they haven't made them very noticeable. I guess I do have a TJ Warren jersey from the bubble, but it hasn't been noticeable. We're not done with the Magic in those shirts. So here, got a couple Evan Fournier from Select. We've got some Vucevic, use that same patch as well. And guess what? We're not done. Elfrid Payton, basically the whole Vanguard print run almost used it, and then a lot of the Spectra Elfrid Payton patches as well. And I imagine they still have some stuff out there. Speaking of Elfrid Payton, they must have had a lot of shirts from him, because they also use this red piece here, which is from a Hoops for Troops warm-up. So you'll notice in the different months, they wear different things. So like the Black History Month was February. I think this Hoops for Troops is November. There are some other ones as well. I think there's a Hispanic Heritage one that you'll see here shortly. But anyway, that's Hoops for Troops. Several other Magic players had them. They had different versions. I think there was a white version, also a gray version. Here's Vucevic. Here's Evan Fournier. So they got really good use out of these shirts, especially with the Magic. All right, so here is the Hispanic Heritage one that I was talking about, and that's where I think these are from. I'm pretty sure that the Elfrid Payton's from there, and I think the Vucevic is as well. As you can see there, it says El Magic, which I think is Spanish for the Magic. We're not done with the Magic. I like this one. I actually do really like this style. I might try to pick one of these up at some point. Well, I like it with the Magic pieces, I should say. There are some Pacers ones out there that I'll show you here shortly that I didn't like as much. And then we get these gray ones, or I don't know what you want to call them, charcoal or whatever. Oh, man. Panini used a ton of these, and not just for the Magic. You're going to see those show up for a lot of other teams as well. But here, you know, it's just that colossal set alone. They had Evan Fournier. They had DJ Augustine. You see a lot of Vucevic stuff. It got mixed in with that. You see Terrence Ross stuff. It got in there as well. And now this one, I want to clarify, this is not a patch because I've made a big deal about that in the past on this video, but you probably have seen, especially in the chromium relic cards, a lot of pieces that look like this material. Well, that's where these came from, these shirts that I've been showing you here. So if you see those, and I'm still seeing them in cards today, even though we haven't had Adidas since 2017, they're still using a lot of that stuff up. Another team that used those is a team I showed you earlier. They got a lot of stuff from would be Portland. So here's a couple Evan Turner cards that had those. I know Oklahoma City had them at one point because here's a few players you can see that had those. Here's a little bit different version, but once again, another Nuggets warm up that's in cards. And then you'll have to pretend for a little bit here. I could not find, I searched high and low, and trust me, I looked hard for this. I could not find the Jazz version of this shirt, so I had to show you the Pacers version. But I suspect that this Rodney Hood, that all of these relics here came from a Jazz version of that warm-up. Are we done seeing that warm-up in cards? No, we're not. Brand new cards here. So Panini took the Timberwolves one from Kevin Garnett. They like to do that. They like to take warm-ups from his later years in Minnesota and pair them with pictures of his earlier years, which, you know, everyone thinks fondly of the earlier years. Well, they used one of these warm-ups or one similar to this for all of his first off the line parallel of this silhouette set. So you can see that there. They had a lot of Timberwolves stuff. So here's an Andrew Wiggins example. Even when Zach LaVine went to the Bulls, they were still using his Timberwolves stuff. So here's one of those gray shirts again. And they also, here's another style of jacket that they like to use. You'll notice that there are kind of two gray bands on that jacket. One of them you can read pretty easily. It says Minnesota Timberwolves. The other one is turned a little bit, but it's on the arm and it says, you know, established. And in the case of the Timberwolves, it'd be 1989. In the case of the Nuggets, because they were part of the ABA, it was 1967. So, but you do see those in cards, and you know, they use that like you see here in 101s. I believe that Zach LaVine is a 101. I have it covered up, but I believe that's a 101 as well. So that's something to look for. Now, I mentioned they used a lot of Timberwolves. Here's a different style jacket that I've seen some. I think one of those Nuggets jackets was like that as well. So we've got all different players there. The front has that wolf head. A lot of times that wolf head has some red on the tongue or some, you know, some different colors here and there. But in this case, it's all silver. So I believe it's from this warm-up. And then the back of that warm-up has the black and silver letters, which you don't see as often. A little bit different style is this Kevin Garnett. They use these in the, I don't know if you want to call that the gold, whatever the number to 10 version of the silhouettes was. They used a lot of those in there. And then I guess I should have mixed these in a little bit earlier when I was showing you those gray shirts or charcoal shirts. The Pacers version was blue. You see a lot of Thaddeus Young stuff. You see a lot of Al Jefferson stuff. You see some Lance Stevenson, although this Lance Stevenson is closer to the warm-up that you see on the right. And I've always passed on these. I'm not big on these relics, but I don't know. Now that I've been staring at all these warm-up cards, I might end up picking one of those up for my collection. You see the Clippers had them as well. Lots of teams had them, but I know they bought some or they acquired some from the Clippers. Even for Paul Pierce, they used those in the standout Immaculate Collection set. Here's another Pacers warm-up from a silhouette set that popped up recently, and it took me forever to find this Pacers logo. Well, you know, I assumed it was a Nike warm-up, and it took me forever, and I finally located it. A little bit easier Pacers warm-ups to find, though, would be the Hickory stuff, and I've seen those with a few players. So here's Miles Turner once again. Here's Lance Stevenson. Those are really nice cards. I have seen a Danny Granger version of that as well, which a couple friends and I have talked about. We believe that's a mistake because Danny Granger never wore any Hickory stuff with the Pacers. So they probably accidentally got those switched with Lance Stevenson, which doesn't make me feel great. about some of what's happening, but I at the same time I do recognize that, hey, mistakes can happen. It's not the end of the world. For the most part, though, I think they get them correct. And then I saw this Towns recently, which there's not a lot of Nike warmups that I've seen in cards, but I believe that this one is from a Nike warmup. So I wanted to show you that. Okay. All of those players were more modern. I know some of them have since retired, like Mike Miller, and some of those guys are out of the league now. But I want to show you something else that Panini does in using a lot of these jackets, especially for older retired players. And I really like this because I think it makes for some really unique pieces. And it's a good way, they can buy these jackets sometimes for like $200 or $300. So really cheap compared to the price of material from that era. Or like some players, it's just, they're not going to get game worn jerseys of Bill Russell, probably not, or Hal Greer, or players like that. So if they can get a warm up, hey, I'll take it, right? So the first one here is one that David, my friend David, owns this card. He's talked about it on the show, but this is, and I believe this is the exact warm up that Panini purchased to make this retro materials set. So I thought that was pretty cool. Another Drexler one that we discovered lately is this 20th anniversary season patch, which I don't know where the rest of those pieces are at. I'd be curious to see if I can find more copies of that Night Moves card. Maybe it's in there. Probably the most common, I would say 80s jackets that you're going to see are these Celtics jackets. And I've seen a lot of people, they'll see these patch pieces and say, when did the Celtics jerseys have gold on them? Well, in that era, they didn't. But they use a lot of these warm-ups for Celtics players. And just think about it. You've got Bird, McHale, Parrish. I'll show you, I think, a few others here as well. I think I've got a Reggie Lewis coming up for you. So you can see where there's several parts they can draw from there. And then, of course, they'll also use the piping around the neck holes and the arm holes. But you've got all the letters on the front there. They'll use that logo man. You've got the shamrocks on the sleeves. They'll use those. Here's a Cedric Maxwell where they had a green warm-up and they used the shamrocks as well. Here's one that I really like and that I've seen show up. I've seen the material show up in some cards recently for Sam Jones. This is an old Sam Jones jacket. Had a unique Hall of Fame founder patch on it as well, and I've seen that in some cards. Unfortunately, I don't have a prime relic for Sam Jones. There's not many of them out there. I don't know if Panini's used all of the material up yet or if they're saving a lot of it, but I'd like to add a prime one at some point. But you can see that jacket is made of like a fleece material. So whenever you get Sam Jones quote unquote jersey cards, it's really from this fleece jacket. As far as I know, that's the only source material that Panini has for him. Now, another one, and this is, I guess I slipped this in here, even though I told you it was all upper deck. I was talking about Celtics, so I must have just added this without thinking about it. I might as well talk about it, though. This is one I've talked about on the channel before. This is one that Upper Deck presents as game worn, which if you think a warm-up is game worn, that's fine. But these were actually practice jerseys for the Celtics. And I discovered that after doing, quite a bit of digging. And you can see here, the example I have on the right is not Nate Archibald, but it's a similar style. So these were actually practice worn. But I own this card. I love this card. I have no issues with that. Probably shouldn't have slipped that in with the Panini stuff, but forgive me for that. It's a card I wanted to show off. Okay, here's one though. If you'll look at the material around this letter of this Reggie Lewis letter, you can tell that it's from the jacket. If it was from an actual jersey from when Reggie Lewis played, there would be some bigger mesh holes there. So that's kind of how you can tell in some eras. You just have to do your homework. In some eras, if it's not porous, and I'll give some other examples of that later, then it is in fact from a warm-up. Some cases like that Sam Jones and like this Hal Greer are pretty easy, though. I mean, they weren't playing in fleece jerseys, and I believe this is the exact jacket that Panini purchased. You've seen a lot of those stars in Flawless. A lot of them were getting shilled on eBay week after week after week, so I never ended up getting one of those. I don't own any of the Hal Greer Flawless stuff. Hopefully one day I will. They also got a jacket for Lou Hudson, and they've been using the stripes on the sleeves and considering those as prime, which that seems kind of like cheating, I guess. I don't know, but guess what? I still bought one because where are you going to find Lou Hudson stuff out there? So I was happy that they got a jacket for Lou Hudson. So I really can't complain about that. Okay, the next jacket, or at least one like it, produced, as far as I know, the largest logo man I have ever seen in a card. Check out that Julius Erving. It's a 1 of 1, and it's only like, I don't know, a third of that logo man, which I thought was pretty funny when I saw that. I wish we would get more stuff like this going forwards. Who knows how many pieces the rest of that logo man's going to get chopped up into, but Panini gets a lot of good use out of warm-ups, but here's one where they used a big piece. Now, another jacket, and I have done some homework, and I believe this to be the exact jacket that Panini grabbed for Michael Thompson. So they used a lot, there's not a lot of prime material there, but they used that Lakers logo for those flawless patches. And then they also had an immaculate set. And I own this card here on the left, where I believe that's where that nameplate came from. Another example of a jacket, and I don't know if this is the exact one they got for James Worthy, but I'm pretty sure that patch came from a jacket. This one here, if we move to some Bulls cards now for a moment, I know that this is the exact jacket that Panini bought for these Ron Harper patches in the flawless set, because I've done that research, and they also used some of the neck and I think the cuffs for the immaculate standard cards that year. But anyway, that's the exact jacket. And guess what? It's not a jersey, but that's a piece of the bullhorn. I own that card on the left. I think that's a really cool card, so I'm happy to have that one. Another, I guess if we're going backwards in time, another Bulls warm up here would be this. I'm assuming it's from 1991 because it's got this centennial patch on it. So it looks like they used a lot of those in Timeless Treasures for Scottie Pippen. And you can see the material. You can see that that's obviously not a jersey. That's that warm up. It all matches up. Going back even further, another Bulls warm up that Panini has used, and I believe this is the exact one as well, is this Artist Gilmore warm up. They can get a lot of material out of that, and I have not seen them use that logo man yet. So I'm kind of curious what they're going to do with that. They haven't used a lot of those after that Irving. I don't know why, but we might see some sort of a patch purge as we move into the Fanatics era. At least we can hope so. All right, real quick, I'll move through some of this a little quicker. Some more jacket stuff here. Like this is owned by Jack Suns Fan 8, the card on the left. It's an Alvin Adams 1 of 1. And he actually spotted this one for me. He says it's from this jacket, which I believe him. I think that all matches up. So I thought that was pretty cool. They've used a lot of Detlef Shrimp pieces from a jacket similar to this one. I don't know if that's his exact one, but one very similar to that. You can see the top of the Space Needle there, and then some of the other pieces I've circled for you. All right. Now we're going to look at some San Antonio Spurs stuff. And I don't know if this is the exact jacket that Panini bought, but I wanted to show you something similar to what they've used for a lot of different Spurs players. And you know what? It makes sense because you can make so many patches out of this material, and it makes for some really cool looking cards. I mean, look at all the teals and the oranges and stuff there. So I don't think that people that are collecting these mind that all that much. Maybe they don't realize it's warm-up stuff, but I would think they have to, right? I mean, what Spurs jersey would have all that stuff? So here's another example here with David Robinson. It would be one similar to that. And then also for the Spurs, they used some shooting shirts. So I believe it was one similar to this for this David Robinson card. And then this next one here is one of my favorites. This, this one I was able to pick out because it has, once again, that 50th anniversary patch, which was never on jerseys, but it was on warm-ups. And that makes for a pretty cool, I guess you could call that top one a logo man. But I still need to track one of those down for Dominique. I have a small piece of it that was left over that they used in, I think, Crown Royale in over the last year, but I'd love to get one of those big pieces as well. It's not the biggest 50th anniversary patch I've seen, though. That comes from the early years of Immaculate. And now the jacket on the right is not actually Rick Mahorn's jacket. That was a player issued one I found in just to show you some of the pieces that went along with this. And I thought this was an interesting case study. So, we see this patch here, so we know for a fact that this is a warm-up. Panini's got a warm-up that they're working with. So if you think about it, okay, a lot of those showed up, years later in National Treasures retro materials. I've got, 6 of them here, and actually there'll be some more. So those all came from just that front patch on the chest. Now, if you look at, like I said, I didn't have the exact Mahorn one, so I pulled a sample from Don Reed to show that they also had a number on the front there. And I was looking through some old Rick Mahorn patch cards, and I noticed this big piece from Lux here, which is a piece of the number, which would have been from a white relic, be it a jersey or a warm-up. If you look at the material around it, though, it is not porous. Okay, it's solid, whatever you want to call that. I don't know. They used to call it like cheesecloth. I don't think it's the exact same thing, but it does not have mesh holes in it. And the reason why I put this Grant Hill jersey here is so you can see this jersey is from the same year as the warm-up. They're both 96, 97, which was that 50th anniversary. So the jerseys that year had huge mesh holes in them. You can see it. You can see it around those numbers. So that is your clue that tells you, all right, this number piece is from the warm-up, so it has to be from that same warm-up. So not only did they get all of these retro materials patches from that, they got some stuff that they used in Lux. They got some stuff here. Here's a booklet from Preferred that came from the back, which has this huge teal, piston. Also that big basketball. So you see some of those pieces have shown up in other things as well. Well, guess what? And like I said, I don't know if these exact pieces are from this exact warm-up. I'm just showing it to you as a sample. Guess what? We've got these trim and these piping pieces that are all over this warm-up. Not only that, on the inside, then you've got tags, and I suspect if Panini wanted to, they could separate that lining and make those into plain relic cards as well. So you get a jacket like this for, I don't know, 150, 200 bucks, and you can make literally thousands of relics based off of this. So if they're doing that with a player like Rick Mahorn, or as you can see here, they're doing that with Bill Laimbeer as well. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. They're doing that with Bill Laimbeer. And I do want to show you the difference once again. I'll keep saying this, and I'm going to emphasize it several times. You can see the one on the left is presumably from a warm-up because of the type of material. The one on the right is most likely from a jersey because it's mesh. Now, that's not true with every team, so you have to do your research, and you have to do research based off of teams and eras. Some more modern jackets that I know of for sure. Well, like this is a Lamar Odom patch piece. And number one, it's got a finals trophy on it. But number two, there's some white behind it. Well, those white are stripes. So that either came from a pair of pants or it came from a warm-up like the one you see on the right here. So we know that they're using warm-ups for Lakers players as well. I don't own that card. I wish I did. I have actually a friend of mine owns that. I do own this Andrew Bynum card, though, which is very similar in that it has that Larry O'Brien trophy piece, which for all we know, that doesn't even mean it was used during the finals. It could just be sometimes they'll do like celebration nights at the start of the next season. But anyway, we know it's from a warm-up because of the configuration of the stripes. We've also seen other pieces here like this Derek Fisher piece. And notice that it's not mesh around it. It's more like that cheesecloth or that warm-up material. And similar style patch, we've got a Kobe Bryant here. Now, that makes me wonder, because if you look at a Lakers warm-up like this, and I'm not saying even this is from a specific player, but if you look at that Lakers patch on the front, The patch pieces themselves look like something that you would see on a jersey card. So, it's going to be, or seemingly could be hard to differentiate those pieces from warm-up pieces. So a lot of people probably have warm-up pieces and don't even realize it. Once again, not saying that's a bad thing, but they probably don't realize it. Now, I want to show you some research I did here. And I took this Kobe Bryant flawless patch here on the left. And I got this image from ComC. I got a lot of these images from ComC, by the way, so thank you to them for having that image archive out there. All right, so let's look at the different types of material that the Lakers have used over the years. So I've got two columns there. On the left side, we've got their warm-ups. On the right side, we've got the jerseys. So the warm-ups, when they were Nike, they were kind of like, I don't know if you want to call that satin or sheer or whatever, but it was a very solid material. When they moved to Adidas a little bit later on, it was still that solid material. And then even into 2012, even as Adidas changed some and modified some things, most of the time the warm-ups were still that solid material. And I know I showed you some earlier that were not, but you can still kind of pick out which ones are warm-ups and which ones aren't. Look at, for the same years, though, the jerseys on the right. So the point here is that the warm-up material and the jersey material look very different. The 2000 Nike stuff and early era Adidas stuff look very similar. Those mesh holes got a lot bigger as Adidas changed their technology later on. You can see in the 2012, those mesh holes are pretty big. So just going off of that, if I'm looking at this Kobe Flawless patch here, that most certainly seems like an Adidas warm-up to me, just based off of this style of this gold material here. Now, can I say that 100% for sure? Well, no, I mean, it doesn't say that on the card. I didn't see them cut the warm-up up, but based off of those context clues, I would say that's the case, because if you look at other Kobe patches, well, first off, this is from the number 4, so that tells us several things. Number one, he wore 24 between 2007 and 2016. I pulled that from Basketball Reference. So we know that that is from an Adidas era jersey from Kobe Bryant. Not only that, we look at this mesh material here and that matches up. So that's consistent. Whereas this one on the right here, they're telling us that's a jersey specifically from this November 2012 game. So we know the Adidas material for jerseys had changed by them and the mesh holes had gotten a little bit bigger. Well, guess what? The piece matches up with that logic. So we can kind of use our context clues there, once again, to figure out what materials are from what relics. Okay, some more examples of that. If you look at this old Kobe Bryant insignias, you'll notice there's like some sort of a, I don't know, pleat or crease or whatever you want to call that, or seam, I guess would probably be the right word, not pleat, maybe a seam. You see that there. So that tells me it's probably from a warm-up like this one here, because not all of them had that line across the front. So we know for a fact that Panini is using warm-up material for Kobe Bryant. Here's another example where it matches up with that warm-up material. So that makes you wonder, if you look at that warm-up, wow, how many patches can they make just off of this sleeve alone? Look at those 3 stripes, because they, typically they don't give you a patch with 3 different stripe pieces in it. They'll split them up. They could probably take that little area, if it's a little patch window, and they could make, 3 different patches out of those 3 different stripes all the way up that arm. So, we're talking hundreds there, maybe even thousands when you count the rest of the relic. So like I said, though, we know for a fact that they're using warm-ups, because this piece here on the left, this is actually my card. This is a Larry O'Brien trophy, and that's from a warm-up, from an NBA Finals warm-up, I believe. And, I've had some people say, well, are you sure that that patch is legitimate? Well, I did some research. There are trophy pieces in other cards from that era and in similar sets. So yeah, I feel pretty good about that one. But that also tells me for a fact that Panini's using some warm-ups for Kobe. Not that that's wrong. So anyway, there you have it. That's kind of my, hopefully it opens some eyes showing you the different types of materials that are used in cards, mainly Panini era, mainly Adidas era. I know some people are irritated by the fact that warm-ups are considered game worn. I don't have a problem with it. Like I said, I own this Kobe card that you see here on the screen. Um, some of them I do own, some of them I showed you even earlier in there, like that Ron Harper patch. I own that one as well. Now, I know that this video was a little bit longer, so those of you that are still here at the end, thank you so much. Do me a big favor, hit that like button, because I spent way too much time on this, way more time than I wanted to, but I really got sucked into this. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Also, remember, there are new episodes of the audio podcast that come out every Thursday. And as always, thanks for watching.